Hey, everybody out there, and welcome back to a very special edition of the Audiophiles. I'm Andy, that's John, and today we are devoting our episode to all the great viewer requests that have come in throughout the year 2024. So, as you've probably noticed, we have a bit of a pattern going here where earlier in the week we reviewed some of the great songs that John has offered the channel uh, from the past year, and then yesterday we covered the ones that I've offered up, and now we have reached Friday, which we have always been devoted to listener requests. So it's a bit serendipitous that we now get to devote this Friday episode to all the great materials that we've sifted through in 2024, highlighting some of our favorites. Now, this is while the year was great for viewer requests, and we've like walked away with plenty of new songs, probably added to both of our playlists and artists to keep an eye out for. It was difficult winnowing all of this down to a list when there have been so many great recommendations out there. So what John and I have done, like in the previous episodes, we've got five of these, almost made it, but we had to make some really harsh decisions that we didn't enjoy. So we will have five on the outside looking in, some honorable mentions, and then we will dig into the meat of our three. We will do that in a bit of a round robin kind of style like we've done in the previous episodes. But we're going to go ahead and start with our five honorable mentions each. But before we do that, John, do you want to hop in and say anything about this year and viewer requests before we get into the meat of this?
Yeah, there's been some really good ones. I was having a look at the list, and I knew 11 out of the all the viewer requests for this year. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I think it's a good thing actually that I didn't know so many in it. Really, some really great songs. I mean, when you get sort of nearly 50 suggestions from people, the odds are that you're going to like all of them is pretty low.
Yeah.
Um, but they've all been really, varying degrees of good,
Yeah.
integrate into absolutely wonderful. Um, so yeah, I've been really blown away by some of the songs in particular this year that have been suggested, some that I should have known, and some new stuff that I could have known but didn't know, but
Yeah.
do now. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah. We always like to not try to speak for one another here and let, ourselves just express how we feel about things. But all I can say to what John just said is ditto. I mean, he pretty much speaks for me as well on that because there were a handful that I knew. I don't know if it was 11, it was probably in the 6 to 8 range. But I do really want to underscore how like affirming it is to have, regular viewers and people who pop in the channel. Who are offering up such great stuff. It's just such a cool community we have of like music listeners who can throw us stuff that we appreciate and appreciate some of the stuff that we throw out to them. So it's really great to have all you guys on board, and we look forward to doing this again all over next year. So all that out of the way, everybody has got their flowers. Let's start digging in, shall we? I'm going to get started with my five honorable mentions, and then John, I will pass the baton to you. And if you have anything to say on the five that I offer up, please feel free to chime in as I offer my little blurbs and thoughts on each of them. These are in no particular order. They're just five that makes me wish that this was a top 10 list and not a top three list with some honorable mentions. But starting things off, we have offered up by Glenn. We have Grinder Man, Mickey Mouse, and the Goodbye Man. Oh man. On top of being just a great live studio version, the song itself was filled with all these great shifts and dynamics, and had this overall feeling of brooding unease and even at points not overt violent tension. It was just great to see Cave almost take on the role of the narrator, which made this experience all that much more enjoyable. And it was visceral and performative, and it was just awesome. So shout out, great shout, Glenn. That was an awesome song. And John, I don't know if Glenn offered this up or not. I can't recall, but if you found the video, hats off to you too, because that really was awesome to see Cave and all of his like Wolfman like aspect performing with his group there. So
Can't remember, but yeah, let's say I did. Yeah.
fair. Okay. My next one is The Willard Grant Conspiracy, The Ghost of the Girl in the Well, which was offered up by Steve Chandler. And this song was so somber, and that narrative of this like poor little girl, so heartbreaking that it really struck a chord in me. I also recall that the male vocals reminding me of Johnny Cash, and that's never a bad thing. And the female vocalist who would then appear in the latter portion of the song, was had this perfectly haunting voice, which added to the mood and the subject matter of this once abused, now dead little girl who lost her life in the bottom of the well, having already lost her innocence to her perpetrator. And the music was poignant, as well, which occasionally utilized these higher registered, almost echoey sounds in the background, which mimic the sounds of cries coming from a well. And it was just a really sad, but I appreciated that touch that they added to that. It really added some dimension to the song and really helped tie everything together, as sad as the story was. But yeah, great shout. Really, really enjoyed that one a lot. Next up, and a total shift in sound and everything is Lovejoy, Normal People Things. Now, this was one that you reacted to, John, not one that I did. And I was familiar with this song, but it was just so great to see your reaction to a newer band. Not that that has become so different now. You've really kind of in the past year, you've brought a lot more newer music to the channel now that you've caught up on really giving me some of the great stuff that I've missed out. Not to say that there isn't plenty more for me to hear, but it was cool to see you kind of like pick out some newer material and listen to that. But it was also really cool for you to check out these guys, which this wasn't our first rodeo with them, but it was cool to hear you listen to this song that you hadn't yet heard by them. And all I can say is rock and roll is not dead, and neither is the trope of rock and rollers being highly insecure, hyper self-aware, and socially awkward anti-heroes, which is pretty much what this song was about. The unbreaking energy of this track, bolstered by just electric drums, wailing guitar work, and manic vocal delivery, all mixed together to make this like perfect new post-punk cocktail that really tickles the cerebellum. And this all combined with a funny and playful piss take of a video made a really terrific experience. And though I was already familiar with the track, it was great to see you give it a go and find in it the same redeeming qualities that I also, that also appealed to me the first time I gave this track a listen. So great shout, Astra 11, for offering up that song. A lot of fun. Now we move on to George Harrison, Art of Dying, offered up by Theroux. Oh, man. So I really looked forward to this song in the week leading up to recording it and meeting with you to discuss it. Now, I know the Beatles catalog like the back of my hand. It's one of the things that kind of early from the jump when we first met each other became sort of a linchpin for our, musical friendship that we've then clearly built on over the last several years. But yeah, I was not. And I'm somewhat familiar with all of their individual stuff, but with Harrison, it's a little bit more enigmatic because like it's the Traveling Wilburys and stuff like that, and with even McCartney, it's like more Wings, not so much their solo stuff that I had latched on to. So to be able to listen to some of George's stuff as sort of this standalone artist was something that I really, really looked forward to. Um, and the guitar work was so powerful on this track, and it seemed like within inches of exfoliating the skin on my face from the moment I hit play. That's how like it was. And I remember thinking and saying, God, I know that there is a Harrison Clapton connection. I mean, it's storied history to the point of like it's almost mythical at this point. But God, that also this guitar reminds me of Clapton. So to rejoin you and dig into the conversation about an already interesting song outside of the guitar work, to have you confirm that Clapton featured on it was like, yes, that's awesome. Because I mean, it just certain artists, you often hear it with singers, but certain artists, you could just tell who's playing when you hear the instrument being played. Like Flea on bass is one of those guys where I'm like, I know that's a Flea song. So to be able to do that with Clapton and have you confirm as much was a lot of fun as well. And I really enjoyed hearing George like inject his Eastern philosophy into this very Western rock sound, which, comes as no surprise, but it's still fun every time you hear it, knowing, who George was and, you know, his moral compass and his spirituality, if you will. So yeah, this was a lot of fun, and he's for me always been, I don't know how you can be one of the most underrated Beatles when there's only four of you and you are collectively the greatest rock band that ever lived, but he's as close to the Beatle that flew under the radar as there is probably. So, and he's always been my, and this isn't a pejorative, but like my second favorite Beatle. Like I'm just a Lennon stan, so are you, John, but George is like, he had this air about him that was so intriguing to me. And it probably was born of his like quietness and his humility, which is so admirable. Honestly, from just a human standpoint, Harrison's probably the most admirable one out of the whole group. Like humble, faithful, openly empathetic, which isn't to say that the others weren't, but there was just something about the cut of his character that made him a little bit different. And so I really enjoyed listening to the song, but also the discussion about the man afterwards. For a guy who I think every day deserves his flowers, he was such a important part of rock and roll, and certainly my rock and roll comeuppance and sort of coming up and learning about rock and roll. And he was just such a huge influence. So a lot of fun and probably something that was long overdue for me. So thank you for offering that up out there. And finally, they for the second year in a row, I believe they are making my honorable mention list, and that is television with the track Friction. Now, if Marquee Moon didn't make my top three last year, there's no way that unless it was a really down year, that Friction was going to make my top three because Marquee Moon is such a standout song on, as I've come to find out through this song, a standout album because this really shined light on, oh, this is more than just one really epic track. It's an album that is likely full of wonderful music, and Friction was no different. From the descending guitar motifs that was so quirky and original, to the wailing blues lead runs, crashing chords, the guitars throughout this tune were just absolutely infectious and kind of a tour de force in all ways. Rhythm guitar, lead guitar, what you can do with sound and guitar. It was just a lot of fun to listen to. And that should take nothing away from the really steady bass work and rolling drums beneath the surface that kind of anchored all of this guitar energy and kept it, tethered to the earth. So yeah, a lot of fun. Also, Tom Verlaine's vocals were filled with all this character and bite, and that gave the song an added jolt of electricity as well. I recall saying that I was impressed but not surprised. And I think that little phrase can probably be Control C, Control V, copy and pasted to any song that features on this album. This was just a really fun listening experience, and it was just such good shit. Yet another example of an excellent suggestion by our community members. So there you have it. Those are my, oh, no, that was offered up by Juan Kelly, I should say. So hats off to you, Juan. Awesome shout. And those are my five honorable mentions, all really any day of the week. And as time moves on, could likely fit into my top three songs offered during this year that I learned. So yeah, good stuff, guys. Loved it.
Yeah, just to pick up on some of those, I haven't included any songs that I already knew. Otherwise, that Grinder Man performance would probably definitely be in the honorable mentions at least. And the same with Foxhole, Foxhole.
Yeah, I
But
was torn between Friction and Foxhole. I really the only the determining factor was that this was also on Marquee Moon, and I feel that that album as a whole should get as much shine as it can. So that was the tiebreaker for me because I love the Foxhole.
well, there's another one off the second album which I've got lined up for you in 2025 anyway.
Okay,
So
great.
you should get onto that. But yeah, and obviously I knew George House as well, but there's you're right, it's weird how overlooked that album is because it's as good as any of the latest stuff the Beatles really is. It's an amazing
Yeah,
album. Um of the other ones I did really enjoy Lovejoy, and they're of a standard. Is it three or four I've listened to, but they're all been
yeah,
really enjoyable. Um, that William Grant conspiracy song was just haunting. It was beautiful. Really,
yeah,
really enjoyed that. So yeah,
yeah,
I'll
yeah,
echo
yeah.
all those. Right, so my turn for honourable mentions. I've got five as well. I will say that the top two of my three um are solid, and then the third one on any given day could be interchangeable with these other five as well. Any one of these could have. It just so happened today that made the cut. So, yeah, first off, Let's Active, Waters Parts. That was suggested up by Bob Page. Given my sort of history in terms of jingly jangle, college rock, REM, this was great to hear some Mitch Easter stuff, and I really enjoyed it. Um, it was just jangly college pop wonderland. Step on board. So yeah, really, really good fun. Um, Second one, Holger Chukai, Persian Love. And now, having last year been introduced to Can, and falling in love with that band, to hear him do his own stuff. This was, sorry, by Robin, our Bets SX, suggested this one. This is a real eye opener. I kind of got from previous Can stuff that he was always messing around with tapes and loops and samples and stuff. But then hearing this was just mind blowing, and it was this kind of weird, angelic Middle Eastern sort of chorus of angels almost. It was amazing.
Yeah.
Really blew me away. And very, very different to what anything I was expecting. Not exactly krautrock, but yeah, really enjoyed it. And then somebody else tested me. Will Hildebrand, 1313. Found out that I wasn't that keen on Black Sabbath, and just sort of gave us a Black Sabbath song to listen to. And luckily, it was one of the very early albums. So no Howling at the Moon nonsense. Yeah, Black Sabbath, Hand of Doom, and all I say is those fucking drums were just incredible. It
Yeah.
really was. So I have changed my mind, not completely, but I have changed my mind a bit. Um, Next on the list, Jack, Dress You Up in Mourning,
Yeah.
offered up by Steve Chandler. I won't do the numbers and letters after we know Steve. Yeah, this you reacted to this, but this was an overblown dramatic diamond. I really enjoyed this a lot. Sometimes less is more, but sometimes more is more. And this was more and more again. But they pulled it off, and the whole album I really enjoyed as well. And finally, in the list of five, Fire Engines, Candy Skin, offered up by Jizo. Yeah, this is iconic, and I had heard like about 10 seconds of it, just like, and it's going, oh, that's all I'd heard. Um, and I realize now what an iconic track this is. And it does sound like your mates just kicking up a storm in your front room. I mean, it's just so like lo-fi, it's
Yeah.
unbelievable and basic, but it's kind of in that because of that, it's so pure as well.
Yeah.
Um, and probably kick-started most of the sort of Scottish indie DIY type stuff that from the 80s. It has been a good year, and I'll tell you why it's been a good year, because I have purchased 6 albums based on viewers' suggestions, and more besides actually. But I've got 3 Let's Active records now, including this one, which has got Force Part on it. I also, I did say that I got this, and it arrived too late for the episode. Jack, Pioneer Soundtracks, which has obviously got uh, a lot on there, including Dress You Up in Morning, and Fire Engines. Um, and also all of my top 3 I've bought as well. So it can't be that bad if I've invested that
There you
much.
go.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
I was gonna say if
that
that
says a
doesn't
lot.
underscore it, I don't know what does.
Yeah,
Yeah, I gotta say, a lot of what you chose, a lot of the episodes that you chose, now the ones that you listened to, I should say, were some of my favorites to research. So it makes there's kind of this correlation
yeah,
there
yeah,
that's kind of interesting because like I really loved listening to the Holger Chikai song, and I thought it was really interesting and informative and almost historical.
yeah,
And it had like it held weight as not only like an enjoyable music listening experience, but also this history of music lesson that I got to kind of like learn up on and then share with you, which I knew you knew some of this stuff, but there was just some really interesting information and factoids that I came across while doing the research for this. So that made it all that much more enjoyable for me as well. Let's Active was a lot of fun to learn about too, because I had no idea that there was this contemporary of REM that was kind of doing similar stuff, and somehow, even though they were surpassed by them as far as influence and name recognition when you think about the genre, they were influential to REM in their own right. So that was a lot of fun to listen to. On top of it just being like a really good song as well. The Black Sabbath was fun just because like I had some, I walked in with a little bit of knowledge of this era of Sabbath, and it is my favorite era of Sabbath because they were still so they had let oddly they hadn't yet really become who they would become yet. So they were still dabbling in sounds that I think you and I are a bit more comfortable with and like and gravitate toward as well, like they did as young musicians. So it had this doom blues sound kind of to it
Yeah.
rather than just this hair metal type sound that they would then end up sounding more like as they progressed through the years and well into the 80s.
Yeah,
So
it was more Led Zepp one than hair metal bullshit. Yeah.
yes, exactly, exactly. And that's what makes those first three albums so damn good. And yeah, Jack and Fire Engines, great stuff. Jack, I remember the lyricism being really evocative and interesting, and the discussion thereof being awesome. And a lot of fun to dig in with you. And Fire Engines was just charming in
Yeah.
all of its lo-fi aesthetic and quality. So yeah, five great shouts, John, and to all you who offered them up. Five great shouts. So, that out of the way, I suppose we should get into our top threes, right?
Mm.
Okay. Well, then, I will start off. And I will say that the number three spot is occupied by a song I don't have to reach very far back into history to grasp at, and that is Motorcade by Magazine, offered up by Terry Sutton. Okay. Tempo shift. That lead was so great. It was so edgy, and it was like it felt like it was like screeching with anguish and writhing around. Um, the lead almost became sentient because I can put like human attributes to the way it sounded. It was incredible. Um, and from the moment they've increased this tempo, it's just been go, and they haven't really stopped yet. They're just adding different elements here and there at breakneck speeds, uh, which is all really jarring and interesting. I wonder what this shift signifies in maybe in a larger story picture that I haven't picked up on, and I won't. This is definitely one of those where you have to go back and listen to it, and get some perspective on what it's about, uh, to really like educate and fully form your opinion of it, from like a big picture. Like I love the way it sounds, but I'm further intrigued to learn what it's about and perhaps why some of these choices have been made. But I have from just a pure enjoyment standpoint, agreed with every one of them. Oh my God. Did I love listening to this track, parsing through not only the music, but the lyrics as well. And our discussion after was one of my favorite recent discussions that we've had. We have some really cool dives into the songs that we work on and listen to. But this was one of the more, I don't know, thought provoking ones that we've had. Um, and yeah, it was just, I'd heard once I'd heard this, we had discussed my interpretations and your findings, and it was really cool to see where I'd sort of made the correct correlations and what you opened up my mind to further interpret as you gave me more information about it. Um, there's this ominous and eerie aesthetic to this one, and coupled with these again the evocative narrative of the lyrics, I was left in such a state of morbid curiosity. The song also utilizes this really interesting shift in tempo. And I remember hearing it and at that point realizing that there was sort of this stream of consciousness depiction of a moment in time, and that usually dating all the way back to like classical music that is, with no lyrics, that just the movement of the music and the dynamics of the instruments are supposed to inform something occurring, action within a time frame. And that shift in tempo and the sort of the calamitous nature thereof made me think, oh God, this is the moment that something big has happened. And when you think motorcade, your brain goes to Kennedy and assassinations. So I realized everything kind of came. It was like being a detective, a musical detective, and putting this all together. And it was a lot of fun. And I was spirited away to the scene of some like political assassination in a very public setting, being peppered with details, both extraneous and relevant, which was a very interesting thing because that's so human. Noticing the vendor which really doesn't have anything to do with the heft of what occurred, but it's so human to be. You could smell the sense in the air when you have all this information, and everything becomes really vivid and interesting. What?
Unless he was a CIA plant.
Yes,
Um,
yeah, unless you're right. But yeah, it painted such a vivid picture, but without directly communicating to the listener the who, the what, the where, the when, and the how, or the details of all those things, of what just unfolded. It gives you just enough to kind of put it together on your own. And the song, I mean, there's sort of this feeling that in this setting you should not feel safe. And there's just enough for me to love how a single piece of art can move me to feel things. Hell, even see things and in the mind's eye, or smell things because of the depiction. There's enough physical depiction of what's going on that you smell the hot dog vendor or whatever around you, and it's just um I don't know, it's so much to there's so much more to this experience for me than just turning on a song and liking it for what it is musically. There was all this added dimension and detail that made me enjoy it on multiple different levels. So yeah, this was a real treat to listen to. I loved it, man.
yeah, good shout, good shout. I've not very much to add apart from, I mean, this is a fantastic album. In many ways, for me, this album is McGeoch's album, and his guitar work, particularly on the Light Shines Out of Me, is just incredible. But this, the keyboards really stand out, and then even more so in the next album as well. But in Magazine are just fantastic band, and you can see the split in terms of when he was in the Buzzcocks and Pete Shelley goes off, pop sensation,
Yeah,
beautiful harmonies, great, witty, dry, and he goes off Howard Devoto, and it's this experimental, almost sort of proggy sometimes,
yeah,
and very threatening. you know, his lyrics are great, and and you see footage of him, and he would not be out of place, you know, as Richard O'Brien, and in Rocky Horror Picture Show. He's got that sort of sinister butler look about him as well. Fantastic, yeah, great track.
great.
Okay, my number three. So this is a fairly recent one as well, I think. Um, this is Hello Mary. Looking right into the sun, live on KEXP, offered up by Josh Leary, 4512.
Forced into the ground to conceal the sound, hidden from the crowd, heartbreaking too loud. Looking right into the sun, looking right into the sun, looking right into the sun, looking right into the sun.
A lot to unpack there already. We're not even a minute into it. Oh, it's a short song. Okay, really, three piece. Sounding great. KEXP, sounding great. Um, really nice guitar start opening it up, and then come the drums and the bass. Um, her vocal quality is got that sort of slightly, it's sharp, it's slightly off key to it, which gives you the, but it didn't sound terrible, but it sounds, gives you that an uneasiness listening to it. Um, and the drummer was like coming in with just single words back, and then the two voices together, hers was like straight and melodic. It worked actually really well, offsetting each other, and it sounded like you get this sort of that sort of motion with it. I think they were like putting things on the fourth beat, and the bass was doing a bump thing as well, and there's like a little splash, and her singing the words. What was it? I wrote down ground, sound, and crowd. Really interesting. And then we go into this like Pumpkins riff. I think that was a chorus. They said the title four times. And then we come out into this sort of Nirvana break, which is really cool. Um, Fuck it.
Forced into the ground.
Yeah. Now, you did say, I'll go to the end of this, but then I'll come back. You did say that this is really interesting and they've got stuff to offer up in their second album. I can remember the shape of it on the front, blah, blah, blah. So I cheated and went out and I got that the first album, which has got this on it. And I've already listened to it and it's bloody awesome. And it's this sort of similar style. Um, yeah, just really interesting. And I think what I loved about this was there's that classic energy from a three piece that we have to mention every time, but they were very tight as well, and they really sounded like a together three piece. The off key vocals were incredible, but they were just the abrasiveness of them was rounded off at the end of each line by the drummer coming in and singing the sort
Mhm.
of correct note, as it were,
Right,
but it
evening it
just
out.
did it. Um, and then she joined in more and more. There was this lovely start. The guitar started off, and it was almost like a Hendrix riff, and then went into Smashing Pumpkins riff, definitely. And then when they come flying out of that bit, they go into a Nirvana break. I'm sure other bands have done it, but it's ping straight to mind Nirvana. And then as they're coming down, you've got this Kim Deal bass line, sort of Pixies first, Breeders album. I mean, what's not to like? But they sound to me like a really exciting band, full of potential and full of 90s references. So yeah, I'm obviously going to be on my list.
Yeah. Yeah, great shout. I knew you would like them, and it was fun for me to learn more about them as well because they were only sort of on my peripheral. So to get them on the channel and listen to them, and again, hear your experience listening to new music was a lot of fun. And you can understand why they would come on a Silver Sun pickups video because they had all of these sounds that were akin to that and akin to some of the bands that you'd think Silver Sun pulled from as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, great shout, great song. All right, so let's dig into our round two. My second one is a good one. It is The Stranglers, Nice and Sleazy. Yeah, we're taking this back because it's awesome. I love that little funk. It's got the slightest bit of overdrive, I believe. It's not much. It's not that super fuzzed out stuff that we've heard before in previous songs where the bass is utilized overdrive, but it's just enough to give it almost this like a slightly metallic kind of sound. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I've always kind of felt that that is this sort of industrial kind of sound to the this light overdrive sound to it. God, it's good. Instantly got my head bopping. Instantly got me to smile. I love this shit. All right, taking it back. Streaking across the sky. This beautiful canvas that's being provided by the rhythm section. This is just fucking great, man.
Nice and sleazy, does it every time. Nice and sleazy, does it every time. Nice and sleazy, does it. Nice and sleazy, does it every time. Nice and sleazy, does it every time. Nice and sleazy, does it.
Christ on a bike. The bass, the bass, the bass. The chunky riffing on the bass was an instant attention grabber. There were also these really, really interesting phasing like laser sounds throughout it, which were akin to like meteors darting across the soundscape. Uh, the keys on this track were bonkers as well. Just manic and stirring and bordering on near sci-fi levels of effect. There was a real jagged nature to the progression of this track, like the terrain of some alien planet. And I enjoyed that quite a lot as well. And from a mood standpoint, the track did a stellar job of kind of towing the line between sinister and playful, like an unsettling but knowing smile. And God, do I love having my emotions and expectations played with, and particularly by music. And this checked all those boxes. It was another home run by our listener out there, one of our truest and longest, Mr. Lord Lockdown Jukebox. Thank you so much for offering up this track. It was the song that sort of opened my eyes to the Stranglers. And now we featured them on the channel quite a bit through viewer requests. And John, I believe you offered up a Stranglers track as well, right? So I've got it from both avenues, and each time has been a really great listen. God, they've got their rhythms are so infectious, but the keys are really crazy as well. And the sometimes sinister way of the lead vocalist and how he delivers the vocals are really fun as well. So it's you're not just listening to a song or having kind of a musical experience when you listen to a song by these guys, whether it's their own or some reimagined version of a song you never thought they would touch or should touch. That turns out ending up better than the original. Just awesome. I'm really glad I had my eyes open to the Stranglers in 2024 and got to check out these tracks and some others. And hopefully we can get some other stuff on here by them that I'm not familiar with yet, so I can continue to grow and learn more about these guys that I've definitely struck up an affinity for in the year 2024.
Cool. Yeah, I've been listening to Stranglers since I was 12 years old. So, Um, but I have to say, yeah, the nice and sleazy does it every time. Um, yeah, now that you mentioned that sort of Harley exhaust sounding bass from Jean-Jacques Brunel steals the limelight quite often, but for me, Dave Greenfield's keyboard
Yeah.
work is what makes the Stranglers special and stand out. Hugh Cornwell's growling, snidey, and
Mhm.
sometimes threatening vocals just ices the cake, really.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, so I have got some more Stranglers for you. I may even go the whole hog and give you Golden Brown, which everyone loves apart from me. So I'm going to give you a song which I don't like, and you can make your own mind up.
Okay.
So yeah, we will definitely have more Stranglers in 2025.
Awesome. I can't wait. And I never really expected myself to say I look forward to the Stranglers, just on name value alone. But man, so good. So good. Cannot wait.
Right, my silver medal position. This is another relatively new band, very new for this year. Um, Mary the Junkyard.
There's her voice is really pretty. It's almost this like ashy, wispy kind of delivery, and it sounds really like it is beautiful, but it's so melancholic as well. Like she's lost or kind of like at the end of her rope. And it's only further enhanced by this really beautiful kind of like meandering plucking motif on the guitar. And I think I'm hearing a little bit of bass in there as well. Um, yeah, it's painting quite a sad picture, but it is gorgeous in its tone and sound. I'd be interested to see where it goes from here. And while we're stopped, this thumbnail is incredibly interesting as well.
See myself high above the city.
So breathy.
I'm always waiting for something bored, something blue, but I am that something blue, and I am cut away from you. And he said, "Get out of my way," and I destroyed the Tuesday. I'm always waiting for it when I'm getting close to you, and I'm always rooting for it, something bright, something blue, but I am that something blue, and I'm getting close
That
to you.
bass.
You say, "Get out of my way," and I destroy the Tuesday. I'm always waiting for it when I'm getting close to you. I'm always waiting for it, something bright, something blue, but I am that something blue, and I am cut away from you. He said, "Get out of my way," and that destroyed the Tuesday. I'm always waiting for it when I'm getting close to you. I'm always
Mm. Mhm.
The track Tuesday, offered up by Michelle Marsh, 3924. Yeah, from Cage the Elephant Shake Me Down episode. And you reacted to this one. I think this is the only one I picked that you reacted to. Um, Interestingly on this, Angry Weepy Chaos Rock is one of the tags for their sound, and I think it's just spot on. Um, I would say both of us agreed on this, that this is one of the most original and atmospheric tracks suggested this year. Um, Floaty, breathy vocals, full of charisma. And I said that losing the edge of her voice, almost like Björk in certain ways. And that post-punk sound that they produce, we've had a touch of the sort of shambolic nature of the Libertines, the way it was going along. And you mentioned sort of almost this jazzy period pieces in it, the meandering guitar, which had definite, and you picked this out as well, but Radiohead stroke Oh Brother sort of detours along the way. And then this very sort of catchy, crashing finale. Yeah, I just was blown away by it. So much so, I bought the EP, take it out of the silver, which arrived a day too late for our recording. Arrived the day after. But yeah, last track on there, spelled really badly, is Tuesday. So written really badly, not spelled. Ghost Goop. Goop's really good, actually. Marble Arch, yeah, Teeth. I really like them all, and I can't wait to get more stuff by them. I'm really impressed by them as a band, their attitude, and what they managed to produce. Although some of their influences are fairly sort of clear, it was original as well. So yeah, I really sort of stoked to listen to this.
Yeah, great shout. I mean, if it wasn't for avoiding doubling up, they would have been in my top five of the honorable mentions for me over the past year. And again, this is a year where the choices have been so good that it was really hard to winnow them down. But yeah, if it wasn't for the sake of avoiding repeating one another, they would have made my list as well. Really great shout, and you've said some of the things that I pointed out in the video, so no need to repeat them on my own. I will just say I was right then, and I'm right now about how good that sounded, as you are in your summation of listening to the song as well, my friend. So great shout. And now to the number one choice of viewer requests for the year 2024. The band Cursive and the song The Casualty that was offered up by Evol 2021.
That has fallen.
Okay, first of all, we're taking that back. God damn, I love the harmonics of that on that one guitar, coupled with kind of like the rhythmic pattern of the other with the chords. That nice loose kind of drum beat filling in the gaps intermittently when that guitar stops. Then that goes on for a little bit, and then we get that like I mentioned a moment ago, that harmonic guitar coming in there with all those lovely pitch pick harmonic things happening. Oh, sounds so good. It's like a jolt. It's like a shot of espresso. Really, really enjoying that. From the moment I hit play, I knew that this was firmly in my wheelhouse of music. It was such a pleasure to listen to this. I adored this track and have listened to it so many times since. The pinch harmonics, that sort of pinch harmonic laden riff, and the cymbal forward drum beat captivated me right out of the gate. And things only grew more interesting as that segued into this really subdued and intentionally placid vocals, which held up against one another. These two parts provided a very stark contrast, which made the song only that much more intriguing to me. And we had the chugging rhythm sections that were coupled with the higher pitched guitar, and that provided such a beautiful soundscape for the verse. And then the chorus kicks off into this post-hardcore, emotionally turbulent and raw motif, only to be capped off by the smooth transition back into the subdued verse with this like kind of stuff. And it was just stellar guitar work and drum progressions. And I also really loved the poetic and metaphorical machinations of the lyrics in the song. I recall catching the lyrics, nighttime triggers the landmines, bedroom wounds, lovers like brigadiers marching two by two, marching two by two. I love that stanza of lyrics. I think it really does a great job of highlighting the turbulence between two lovers. And yeah, like maybe it comes to a head at night when you're in the bedroom trying to settle down for bed, and it all turns into, this combustive altercation, um, which is never great, but it's really interesting to hear it described like that. So yeah, I loved the lyrics in this one a lot. I was also pleased to learn that this band was my missing link from the early Saddle Creek record artists. We've covered them all on the band or all on the show now. So we had covered Bright Eyes and The Faint. So it was great to hear these guys as well and get them on the channel and kind of fill in this small knowledge gap for me on a record label that, at the time was churning out some really new and interesting music out of that Nebraska area. So yeah, it was a lot of fun to kind of learn about that and fill in that knowledge gap that I had. And the track again had me written all over it. So I was stoked to have this recommended, and to be the one, and to be luckily be the one of us who just ended up, drawing the name out of the hat or whatever, flip of the coin. I got to be the reactor to this. However, I also recall being extra curious what you had made of it. And I think that the reasoning for that is two pronged. One, because I honestly loved the track and wanted to know like what you made of it. But two, and more specifically, because this song was more of my time and genre inclination. So I knew how I was going to feel about it. But given my respect for you and your thoughts on music that came after eras that you were accustomed to listening to, I genuinely wanted to know what you made of it. So this made the discussion of the song that much more interesting for me. And those are the reasons why this was my favorite viewer request of 2024. This was one of those little blind spots during a time that I was taking in music, so rapidly, that it was odd that there was even this gap, but that it existed and got filled by this one-off request on this channel that we just started doing. It just made me feel great. And I was like, oh man, this is why we do this. And honestly, so are all these other songs. Like, I enjoyed them all. It's all and a lot of fun. But this one was extra special to me just because it kind of is like that little missing piece of the puzzle that I didn't even know was there until it was expertly placed in there for me. So shout out to Evol, really great song for me to listen to, and a really great conversation that you bequeathed on us to have ourselves that we wouldn't have had otherwise. So yeah, it was a lot of fun for me chopping this one up, man. So that is my number one.
I'm not surprised. I would say, yes, this is very much more your tune than mine.
Yeah.
I would say that the intro that you talked about was wonderful and probably one of the best intros of any song we've heard this year. Really. Cards on the Table, the angsty vocals of the chorus in particular is the bit that, lost me. But I'd say the musical approach was spot on. There was plenty of that sort of Pixies influence. And it was really interesting thinking about this because for me, it kind of is settled into, it reflected a period in the latter half of the 90s where I felt there was a real divide between American music, North American music, and UK music, and in terms of the approach. And I really, for the first time, did not like the American approach, and sort of went off American sounding music for about 5 years. Whereas the 5 or so years prior to it, I lapped everything up. There was of that kind of indie alt rock guitar based, more frenetic, not frenetic, but energetic or whatever, just a bit of distortion and bollocks, all the bands from that sort of first part of the 90s, it was my sort of meat and potatoes. And then there was a kind of divide, as it were, and I didn't go with the second half, and that's probably, that's my taste and whatever. I got you for in the 90s, you'd have grown up to all of this, and I would have dug it up, much like some of the bizarre bullshit I listened to. So yeah, it was just really interesting to sort of hear that as well. But hearing particularly Pixies' influence on it was, and then thinking, well, why is it that I like Black Francis's screeching and I don't like this guy's screeching? And
Yeah,
sometimes you can't even work out why you like something and not the other when they're exactly the same, or not
yeah.
exactly, but very similar.
But clearly
And
akin. Yeah, yeah, to one another. Yeah,
exactly. So yeah, but really interesting. And I thought it was again one of the more interesting shouts from the viewers on the channel. And
yeah,
I could see how it would be catnip to you quite
yeah.
easily.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. We are who we
Uh,
are. So,
exactly. Okay, so that leads me to my number one pick. I have picked Pylon Danger, as suggested by Kevin M. Okay, this is more of a sparse sound than what I've heard from Pylon, from the stuff I've heard from the Chomp album. It has got that very early new wave sort of rhythmic, dancey quality to it, and I absolutely adore this. This is fantastic. It kind of puts me in mind. They're similar time. I think they're later, but the Au Pairs, British band. Um, there's a bit of that sound to it, but I think this is before them. It's the same time-ish. But yeah, that sort of minimalist, really nice groove to it. They do different things with the quite simple percussion, but it's quite art schooly as well in a way. And that guitar just changing, you start going into a more sort of cowboy riff type sound there. It's going to bring that back a step. But this sounds fantastic, right up my street. So I knew Pylon from years back, because REM covered their song Crazy, which was on the Dead Letter Office album, the last IRS Years album that we covered, or Sang to Last, or whatever it was. But anyway, and then from there I heard the original and I really loved it. And my mate Rob, who I've referenced before, hello Rob, he bought Pylon. They re-released their albums in a lovely box set, and it was lots of money. And he didn't tell his missus how much it was. And then, like a week or so later, he came around and gave me his copy of Chomp with the teeth marks along the top,
nice.
which he actually got when he was in America touring around after for like a year or so, touring around America after he left college. And I believe he bought it there, and it's got Crazy on it amongst other stuff as well. It's a really good album. I do like it. I like Pylon. I think they're mental, and but I never dug into any more of their stuff. So again, like you're talking about gaps of
Yeah.
knowledge, and just because I'm a lazy sod. So this came up and it's like, yeah, and more for me because I like another album I bought, Jarre. I like it even more than Chomp. I really, really like it. It's this basic, stripped down post-punk feel to it, but it's just like they're tapping into something, a theme of this, post-punk, new wave, what do you want to call it? That sort of funky, rhythmic, spiky. Oh, it's just fantastic. And so in this, the clipped guitars that go in, the drive it, and then those weird bended guitars are like haunted boomerangs eclipsing around your head. Um, the vocals that are just completely insane and appropriate, and that standard stuff of Vanessa, whatever her name is, and they threw in a pee whistle. Why not? So yeah, just absolutely wonderful. I mean, it's a fantastic track anyway, but with all the other stuff around it and what I've got out of that, just that one track, makes it my number one pick.
Yeah, that's awesome. Great selection. Yeah, I echo everything you said. It was a lot of fun listening to these guys and reading up on them and learning about them. It was also it's just interesting how both of our first picks are these things that hit extra special with us because of the knowledge gap and what you miss when you think you've got it all down. You think you've heard everything that came out during your peak time of music absorption, but here you are. Somebody comes along and not only provides you a great song and a great band that you had missed out on, but a little bit of humility as well, because you're like, damn, dude, at the time I really thought I had my finger on the pulse of everything that was going on with my kind of music at the time, but here we are years later learning about what we missed, and it's like a I don't know, like a delayed gratification, that you didn't know that you would have, or you didn't know you could stir that feeling that you had about music when you were like, I don't know, in your early 20s or something like that. But here we are, and honestly, it's all thanks to you guys out in the listening audience and providing us with new material that we can check out. Yeah, don't get me wrong. John gives awesome music, and it's great to hear some of his perspective too. But when there are songs out there that he's not yet heard and I've not yet heard, and we introduce him to the channel, it's just this whole added dimension and sense of
Yeah.
community when it comes to music sharing. So thank you guys. I know you don't do the editing, I know you don't feature on this side of the camera, but you are as integral to what we do here as either of one of us. So we really appreciate you being part of the Audiophiles community. So thanks to another great year.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. I'll wrap things up and say thanks to all of you lot for your suggestions. It's been really good. We look forward to what people are going to drop in the comment section. Remember, any episode, we'll add it to the list for 2025. The list is long, as they say, but we'll get there in the end. And we do our best. Remember, there are only sort of like 52 weeks in the year, and 2 of those weeks we coast with clip shows and stuff like this bullshit. So there's only probably 50 episodes in a year. So I remember someone dropped, I think it was about 15 or so requests in one comment, and I was, yeah, that's probably going to take you up until the year like 2037 or something, you know. But thanks. So
Do
please,
appreciate it.
yeah. Yeah, please drop the comments, your suggestions, you know what sort of shit we like, but it's always interesting to hear stuff that we don't that we may not know yet that we like it. So that's always really cool. And if I can just have one suggestion, more cowbells.
Yes,
Apart from
always.
that,
Gotta always cure
yeah,
what ails you.
exactly. So, thanks, Andy. Thanks, guys out there. That being said, we'll see you in 2025. Happy New Year and all that shite.
See you later, guys.